When it comes to my personal main go-to air cooler, the Be Quiet Darkrock Pro 4 is definitely my number one. I bought this one-hit KO ball back in May of 2020, like a year and a half ago. Back then the idea was to use it as a case review tool to test airflow. But it kinda seems that I didn't think this through, as most of the mid-tower cases I got were absolutely not built to fit this behemoth. That being said, the cooler did not just stay in the corner unused. I used it for bigger cases, B-roll, CPU benchmarks, and for a period of 6 months it was even the cooler which cooled down my editing rig. What I'm trying to say is that I have used this particular cooler a lot. I've installed it many times, sometimes even multiple times within a single day, and it's got its long-term usage traces. Back in May 2020, I decided not to create a review about it because I simply did not have enough coolers to compare it to. I thought a comparison between a top-of-the-line air cooler and the air cooler which is used to cool a McDonald's McFlurry machine was just inappropriate and boring to watch. Like, no shit, Sherlock, of course a Darkrock Pro 4 is better than a free Happy Meal cooler. But now, I got a bunch of coolers to which I can compare it to. But because my unit looks like it comes straight out of a war zone, this time we'll do a full review and we will go over the long-term usage effects of me treating it like I know I will never do a review about it. So this is still a complete review, so let's treat it like one. This behemoth of a cooler, which definitely looked like this when I unboxed it, is the Be Quiet Darkrock Pro 4. This 7 heat pipes dual tower cooler should be able to handle up to 250 watts TDP of raw hellfire. At 163mm height, 136mm width and 146mm length, it is by no means a cooler meant for smaller builds, so make sure that it fits before you get it. In order to cool everything down, the Darkrock Pro comes with two different fans. A 135mm one which should be installed in between the heatsinks and a 120mm one for the right side. I wasn't able to find out a lot about these fans other than the 135mm is spinning at 1200 RPM and the 120 at 1500. So yeah, we need to take it like that. Included in the box, we will find the usual AMD and Intel mounting gear, a syringe of thermal paste, a 2-to-1 splitter, and most importantly, this Be Quiet screwdriver. When it comes to compatibility, the Darkrock Pro 4 can be slammed on top of a LGA 1200, every LGA 1150, 2066, 1366, 2011-3 socket for Team Intel. Over on the red side, we have support for AM4, AM3 and so on until FM1. In order to install the cooler, it's a relatively easy process. On Intel LGA 1200 and every 1150 socket, we need to use the included backplate, so just shove the screws through the corresponding holes with a washer on the other side. After positioning the backplate, we can screw in the standoff. Then we need to place the new retention brackets on the standoffs with the ends pointing away from the socket and screw them down. Over on AMD's side, this socket preparation is a bit easier. Just remove the pre-installed black retention brackets, place the AMD standoffs on the still present backplate and position the AMD retention brackets on top before screwing them down. Just make sure that the piece at the top is pointing towards the CPU. From here it's the same procedure for both platforms. Place some thermal paste on top of the IHS, slap the Darkrock Pro 4 on top with the mounting bridge sitting flush. In order to screw it down, we need to remove the two metal hiding thingies which used to be there, but I kinda lost them in time. But once they are removed, just shove that screwdriver through the holes and screw everything down. Now, before we proceed with the fans and so on, a few things which I learned over the last year and a half. This method of installation seems to be extremely easy on paper, but under the wrong circumstances, it's a torture. Credit where credit is due. I have not yet seen any cooler coming with AMD standoffs which are slightly closed off at the end where they will hold onto the backplate. This may seem like small, but believe me, not being built that way makes them incredibly wiggly and they will fall off many times during installation. On here, however, it's pretty much alright. Nevertheless, the mounting bridge is annoying as hell. Even if you give 500%, you are not a robot, and placing the cooler on the CPU will not always be 100% accurate, meaning that the bridge will start lifting on one side and you will need to either fiddle it back in or remove the entire cooler, which will then splash a bunch of thermal paste over the motherboard, which is just hard to clean. And it is not perfect. It would be perfect if the bridge would be permanently attached to the cooler, like with a spring which lets it wiggle to the left and right. And you could make it super perfect if the screw would also be attached in the same way to the bridge. Every socket needs that bridge. Why is it not attached permanently? And I'm not even mentioning that without a permanent fix, a installation inside of a standing case, or god forbid a P5, is a medieval torture method. All of that is a small issue. The biggest issue are the fans. Just like I mentioned in the Dogro 4 review, there is absolutely nothing to remove the fan clips. Sure, I found a way by pressing the fan and then lifting the clip hook out from the fan. And this works really well, and I used this method on my Dogro Pro 4 so many times, it's a real lifesaver. But that's still not the problem. The cooler is constructed in a way that removing or installing the central fan is extremely annoying inside of a case. On a table, it's a very simple process. Mount the cooler, slide the central fan in, clip it down, and you are done. But inside of a case, or more inside of a finished build, no way you will get that fan out without removing the GPU. And sure, that's a rare problem, but what if somebody comes and he has a pre-built and he wants to upgrade his stock cooler? Well, have fun without removing the GPU. I even had a extremely annoying issue inside of a mini ITX case. I don't remember which one it was, but I had like 5 minutes to replace that cooler, and removing the GPU did not give me enough space to clip the fan in after installing the cooler. So what I needed to do is slide the fan into the cooler without clipping it in, then install the cooler by swiping the fan up and down, depending on which screw I was mounting down. Why? And all of that can be traced back to the permanently mounted top plate. Just make it removable. I know that by using a Torx screwdriver you can remove it, but it is still glued or something to the rest of the cooler. It is not meant to come apart. I did take it apart, so I know it, but it's not meant to come apart. It would make upgradability so much better if that thing was just sitting on top, being held by the same thumb screws which are hiding the screw holes. Okay, with all of that long-term generated ranting, what about performance? We benchmarked in our usual 3900X at 4.36 GHz and 1.4 volts V-core. At 100% fan speed, our Dogro Pro 4 managed to keep the CPU at 53 degrees above ambient, just 2 degrees behind the Freezer 50. Decreasing the fan speed in 10% decrements revealed that the Dogro Pro 4 was always a degree or two behind the Freezer 50 and a couple more behind the Noctua NHD 15. But where Be Quiet coolers shine the most is their noise. If we take a look at our noise normalized graph, we can see that there is nothing coming even close to a Dogro Pro 4. Sure, it cannot go as cool as a D15, but even under full load, the Dogro Pro 4 starts off extremely quiet and immediately jumps into unhearable mode as soon as you even touch the fan speed control. And here are also some sound comparisons. Okay, so let's recap the whole cooler thing, because it kind of starts feeling like I'm just ranting about it. The performance is very good. Not the best raw performance, but noise to performance is just unbeatable. The build quality is superb. I was showing off how damaged the cooler looks right now after like a year and a half of usage and probably close to 100 of installation, but that's really not a lot. I am not very kind to my gear. The only two things which, in my opinion, need improvement is permanently fixing that mounting bridge to the bottom, and more importantly, unpermanently fixing the top plate to allow the fans to be installed from the top. But other than that, it's an amazing cooler. On the price side, it's actually surprisingly good. In Europe, you can get this big behemoth for something around 70 euro and around 90 on Amazon US, which compared to something like a Noctua NHD 15 seems pretty fair. Now, would I recommend it? Yes and no. If you are planning to do like really heavy overclocking on CPUs which are already hot to begin with, yes, absolutely. But if not, like if you're planning to use a 3900X equivalent or less in a normal, humane way, I would suggest stepping down to a Dogro 4. Sure, the Dogro Pro 4 is a bit better in every category except for the second fan part, but there is only a degree or 2 degrees C difference over the whole spectrum between the two, and that just doesn't feel like enough for a normal use case. But if you want to go overkill, sure, go for the Pro, I would too. On a short sidetrack, I wanted to mention something. I don't know how you feel about this, but when I get new gear and there's something in there that follows me through a longer period of time, that kind of burns into my head. Be Quiet is a perfect example here with their screwdriver, which is I use this every freaking day. No matter what build or review, you can bet that I've built it with my Be Quiet screwdriver. They could have just added an IKEA Allen wrench with a Phillips head. Those do exist, but no, I would call it quality stuff, which then ends up being a daily driver, and it's that type of positive connection in someone's head, which is, in my opinion, reason enough to lose an euro or two of profit. But yeah, this was my take on the long-term consequences of me using a Darkrow Pro 4. At this point, I would like to apologize to Be Quiet for what I've done to the amazing air cooler. But I still hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, make sure to leave a like and your opinion in the comments below, and make sure to be subscribed because we still have a ton of new reviews incoming. But in the meantime, have a look at the Noctua NH-D15 review. Anyway, see you next time, bye bye.